Now, speaking of the United States, with contests in 16 states and American Samoa, the Super Tuesday primaries next week will be the largest day of voting of the year outside the November election in the US. Just how super it is may be a matter of perspective. Both Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican frontrunner Donald Trump hope to amass a string of lopsided victories that will help them move beyond the primaries and focus on their expected general election rematch. On the other hand, Nikki Haley faces a tough state of contests, mostly in the types of reliably Republican voting states where she has struggled to win support, or in states where parties rule heavily favor the former President Donald Trump. Now, Alabama, Arkansas, California, North Carolina and Texas will hold state primaries on Tuesday. And with that, let's also bring you a sense of what's happening on ground zero. And for that, in fact, we have CNN News 18's Sanjay Suri reporting live from the United States. Sanjay, good to have you on the show. It's coming up to a Super Tuesday in the primaries. Do remind our viewers first just what Super Tuesday is.
The race really is on now, Akanksha, for White House here, and Super Tuesday is a big step in that direction for the two major parties and of course for their nominees. So that Tuesday of next week, March the 5th, is when a whole bunch of states go for their primaries, which of course are the elections within both the Democrats and the Republicans to nominate their candidate for the presidential elections, which are happening on November the 5th. Now, in proportion to the number of votes cast, the state sends delegates for the presidential nominee election, and that will be at conventions of both parties to be held later this summer. We've had primaries, of course, in several states already: Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the last one in Michigan, 6 so far. But Super Tuesday brings in 15 states plus one territory, and that includes such large states as California, that will send in as many as 169 delegates, Texas 161, North Carolina 74. About a third of all the voting happens on Super Tuesday alone. Of the 2,429 delegates that the Republican Party will send in, 874 delegates will be voted in on Super Tuesday.
Absolutely, Sanjay. It is indeed a massive one, but we do seem to know the answer. Does Nikki Haley stand any chance at all against Donald Trump?
It really is looking like a Trump avalanche, isn't it, within the Republican Party? That's the way it's been in the primaries so far, and Trump has won convincingly, crushingly, you might say, against Nikki Haley, and that includes South Carolina, where Nikki Haley was the governor and a popular governor at that. And through the recent primaries, Trump has only been advancing his lead steadily. A lot of people had been expecting Nikki Haley to have withdrawn already, but she's clinging on till Super Tuesday at the least, and probably not beyond that, hoping that a large number of party voters and members will see her as the more sensible choice, really hoping for quite a miracle. Nikki Haley is really up against two mountains, theoretically, the party nomination and then the presidential election, and she seems more confident of the second than of the first. She has summoned all sorts of surveys to suggest that if it was her against Biden, she would win. Trump might not. So she's hoping that her prospects in the second mountain will, in a sense, talk back to the first, to persuade voters to look ahead and vote her now to beat Biden later. Doesn't look like that will happen. Super Tuesday is when Haley is expected to quit, and when Trump is expected to be confirmed as the presidential nominee for the Republican Party.
True. Sanjay, interestingly, we don't hear much about the primaries in the Democrat Party. It will be Biden. So are those also now a non-issue?
It does appear to be a non-issue on the face of it. In the Democrats, the primaries are, of course, going on in quite a shadows in the Democratic Party. But other than one outlandish candidate, there is really no challenge to President Biden at all. So clearly he'll be through as the Democrat nominee. And yet there are questions here too, as we've seen arising in the last primary in Michigan, where a lot of voters ticked uncommitted rather than vote for Biden. Now, much of that dissatisfaction was among Arab Americans, who have a large population in Michigan, but also among the young. And both groups are opposed to Biden's support for Israel, and they would want him to intervene far more actively and more convincingly to secure a ceasefire. Now, if a significant number of the young simply do not vote for Biden in the elections on November the 5th, that could make matters very difficult for Biden because the margins could get
True.
razor thin in some states. So Biden is facing a growing passive opposition within his own party.